The argument for free play. Free play is when children, without external restrictions or guidance, design their own activity and modes of play. It can be wonderful in developing independence, creativity, negotiating skills, interpersonal skills, and fun. School kids live under constant direction and surveillance. Their only opportunity for free play during school are the scraps of time given at recess. Unsurprisingly, most kids' favorite school time activity. It seems to be a growing trend for parents to further shorten free play by signing their kids up for organized sports and activities after school and on the weekends, further putting them in another system where they wear uniforms and follow the instructions of an adult. Home education provides much more time and opportunity for free play. What made you want to add this one? Because I think this is a really important one.
Yeah, well, I had just finished reading Peter Gray's Free to Learn, which I see you've pasted in here.
Yeah.
And, that's, I think, I wish Peter Gray would take the first chapter of the book, like the first 40 pages, and make it into a mini book, and I'd buy probably 5 dozen of them and just hand them out on the street corner. But the trend is just growing and growing. I live in a neighborhood full of kids. And right now, as May approaches, all the conversation is, what camps are you going to sign your kid up for? Because all these adults are terrified of just letting them loose and play by themselves. I was at a cocktail party about a week ago when I was talking to another parent, and he said he's having trouble getting his son to join the chess club, even though he really likes chess. And his son said he's just, doesn't want to be watched over by an adult.
Nice.
And so I dropped a big load of Peter Gray on him and, basically said all of this about the value of free play and how much kids like to, be their own authorities and do things themselves. And the father looked back at me and he said, no, my son's wrong. He doesn't understand. He's not doing it right. And, my heart just dropped. When it wasn't the lack of free play or the authority that was the problem. It was his son that was defective.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting that the son would be so able. How old was the boy?
He's 7 rather.
7 years old. And do you feel like he articulated his problem as clearly as you described it? I don't want to be watched over.
Yeah, he didn't. I forget exactly how he said it, but it was he didn't want to be like in the club. He wanted just to play.
Well, yeah. I mean, if he was able to express himself that clearly at that age, that's a real mystery, as to how he learned to do that. And, kudos to him for being able to do that in a family where the father just says, oh, yeah, my son expressed, his feelings and needs, but he's wrong. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And, I don't this guy, he lives across the street from me. He can sort of see me coming because I've been bathing in this material for so long.
Yeah.
That he knows when to sort of walk away. When I begin discussing what I think parenting is or what education is.
Minesweeper. He knows where to put the flags so he doesn't get blown up. Yep, exactly. Yep. I know a lot of people like that, really, from my own suboptimal past communication strategies. Yeah. They know how to tiptoe around. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to send his 2 children to essentially what is Latchkey. So they go to, it's called Kaleidoscope here, but they after school they spend another like 2 or 3 hours in like a after school.
Yeah. And
for the summer they're going to send their kids to this after school, but it's going to be all day long. So it's just more school.
Oh.
And we it's just I just look at it and I feel sad and like a little repulsed and
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what I can't do anything. I try to live by the best example.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the only advice I could give. Yeah.
People just think we're sort of half insane when we tell them what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, people find it controversial that my wife doesn't go to work, that, she parents full time. So that's even, especially up when I was living in Massachusetts, that used to be people would look at me cross-eyed when, you say my wife's not going to go to work.
Oh, because that's such a traditionalist, non-progressive family system. Right. Yeah. I did want to add, just as a resource for the people listening, there's an article on Aeon called The Play Deficit that Peter Gray wrote for maybe those who don't have time for the whole book. And there's another piece called, it's available online as a PDF, journalofplay.org, Decline of Play, which is also by Peter Gray. But I did just want to share a couple paragraphs from that article, if I could. So he, as you said, he wrote Free to Learn in 2013, and that was a book where he documented the changes in free play over really the latter half of the 20th century. And he also puts forward this argument that there has been, at the very least, a correlation in the rise of mental disorders as play has declined. Mm-hmm. So the excerpt from the Aeon article: over the same decades that children's play has been declining, childhood mental disorders have been increasing. It's not just that we're seeing disorders that we overlooked before. Clinical questionnaires aimed at assessing anxiety and depression, for example, have been given in unchanged form to normative groups of school children in the U.S. ever since the 1950s. Analysis of the results reveal a continuous, essentially linear increase in anxiety and depression in young people over the decades, such that the rates of what today would be diagnosed as generalized anxiety disorder and major depression are 5 to 8 times what they were in the 1950s. Over the same period, the suicide rate for young people aged 15 to 24 has more than doubled, and for children under age 15 has quadrupled. The decline in opportunity to play has also been accompanied by a decline in empathy and a rise in narcissism, both of which have been assessed since the late 1970s with standard questionnaires given to normative samples of college students. Empathy refers to the ability and tendency to see from another person's point of view and experience what that person experiences. Narcissism refers to inflated self-regard, coupled with a lack of concern for others and inability to connect emotionally with others. A decline of empathy and a rise of narcissism are exactly what we would expect to see in children who have little opportunity to play socially. Children can't learn these social skills and values in school because school is an authoritarian, not a democratic setting. School fosters competition, not cooperation, and children there are not free to quit when others fail to respect their needs and wishes. So I agree with most of what he said, and he does give a little more information in this other piece, The Decline of Play, which is a 21-page PDF about the question of the correlation between increase in mental illness and the decline of play. So he goes into more detail there. Obviously, we always have to say correlation is not causation, but he gives a couple of ways that play promotes children's mental health in that PDF as well. One being that in play, children develop intrinsic interests and competencies, which obviously comes from doing something that you have a willingness to do. And another one is children learn how to make decisions, solve problems, exert self-control, and follow rules. Rules that are necessary in certain cases for, people getting certain needs met, for a certain level of social order, that have more of a justification, we could say, than that an authority figure uttered because I said so. So, the universe has rules. Reality has rules. They're good to know. But kids don't really get respect for that because it's always just like, well, what does the authority say? Who can tell me what to do? Who can explain this? So they don't learn, or don't learn as easily the real rules of the world.
Yeah, they also, they don't get to see healthy, pure relationships. I think with constant school, or even Peter Gray goes well into, the soccer practice and all the activities that kids are signed up for now. that even though, it looks like playing, they're still wearing uniforms, they're still being told what to do. But when they're left on their own, they have to act as peers, and they have to negotiate, and they have to take into account other people's feelings, because there's no one binding them to the play activity.
Right.
And that's exactly where the empathy comes from. I think Peter probably could have even said it a little bit clearer. That's where the empathy comes from, is when they actually have to negotiate and account for how other people are feeling.
Sure. Let's see. I'm actually now just kind of scanning through it, looking for a better example of him stating that. But he does say here, in play, children learn how to make decisions, solve problems, exert self-control, and follow rules. If the rise of anxiety and depression are linked to a decline in sense of personal control, then play would seem to be the perfect remedy. A fundamental characteristic of play, as noted earlier, is that it is directed and controlled by the players themselves. In school and in other adult-directed activities, adults decide what children should do and how they should do it, and adults solve the problems that arise. But in play, children themselves must decide what to do and how, and must solve their own problems, including those that arise within the play frame. How to best capture the monster, for example, and those that arise from outside the play frame. Perhaps what to do about Mary's skinned knee or Johnny's lost shoes. In play, children learn to control their own lives and manage the physical and social environment around them. In play, they also learn and practice many of the skills that are central to life in their culture, and thereby develop competence and confidence and feel more efficacious and feel more in control. Now, I'm adding that to the end because the more in control you feel, the more efficacious you feel, the more you probably have available mental space-wise to devote to what's going on for others, and that is essentially the beginning of empathy. And are you familiar with Lenore Skenazy?
No, I've never heard that name before.
She has a blog called Free Range Kids, and her story was she came on the scene with the title given to her by the mainstream media, World's Worst Mother, because she let an 8-year-old ride the subway in New York by himself. And this wasn't like the result of a flipped coin. This was something that they had prepared for, that they had practiced together, and that he wanted to do, and she trusted him to do, right? I mean, one of the biggest things being communicated to kids by teachers, by parents, by coaches in sports, by authority figures in general is, hey, I don't trust you. There's no way someone your age could ever be considered trustworthy. And that's really, really detrimental to most kids, right? Because it takes away from confidence. It takes away from their sense of competence and efficacy as well. And they grow up with that. And because they're so stuck in that mindset of what is the authority? Is the authority watching? Are they going to tell me what to do? What are the rules? That continues right into adulthood.
Yeah, and you also, it seems like anytime you hear the story of a great person who had great success, there's always a story about how they were trusted to do things when they were young. Like Richard Branson, for example, the Virgin Airlines guy, famously says that his mother drove him like 7 hours away in England and made him get home by himself when he was 4 years old.
That's pretty extreme.
Yeah, and just sort of stories like that. You hear, even hear about the legend of like people like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington.
Yeah, Gatto does that in the Underground History, and I don't necessarily approve of his choice of heroes. I know Lincoln is in there, David Farragut's in there, but yeah, I mean, it's a powerful case to make, right?
Yeah. So if the great people do things independently as children, wouldn't that naturally mean we should let our children do things on their own?
Yeah, and that's been Lenore Skenazy's big push, ever since she was labeled the world's worst mom, is, well, maybe I seem bad in this world where she calls it bubble wrapping our kids, where CPS is getting called because 2 kids are walking home from the park, a matter of 3 or 4 blocks by themselves, and the police stop for what do they call that? A wellness check.
Yeah,
and
that's
the kids are
the
put.
Maryland story.
Yeah, well, that's happened in numerous places. I think the most recent example was in Maryland, but
yeah, well,
like the distrust for children and even the distrust for parents is becoming a very strong part of the culture.
Yeah, so I told you that story about how my 9-year-old daughter, loves to go grocery shopping by herself.
Right.
And we actually we're quite we're not nervous that she's going to be captured or anything. We're nervous that somebody's going to call the police on us for letting her roam a grocery store by herself.
Yeah. Now, are you in the store somewhere?
No, I sit in the car.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that would seem like a fairly safe place for me to try that out. And, how does she do with that?
Well, she loves it.
Yeah.
And she insists on using her own money, and it's sort of a very empowering experience for her to be left alone and be independent.
I remember at that age, and I've done a lot of journaling on being that age lately, and I might not have had the words for it then, but there was something exciting about being given trust, or being asked to take responsibility, or being asked to help out in a way that was meaningful, because it was like all very empowering. And in the rest of life, my dad was pretty good about that. But in the rest of life, there were no real opportunities to feel that way.